Hello, welcome to Board Game Madness. I'm Mike Ganade, and today we have the number 6th seed, Quacks of Quedlinburg, versus the number 27 seed, War of Whispers. Now, to give you an idea of what these games are about, if you haven't played them before, I'll start with Quacks of Quedlinburg. Quacks of Quedlinburg is a push your luck game where you're mixing potions and elixirs for townsfolk to cure what ails them. And it's a bag builder where you're putting things into a bag, mixing it up, pulling things out, and trying to continue your streak for as long as possible without pulling out the bomb chips, if you will, the cherry bombs that will blow up your elixir. So the more chips you draw out, the more you'll count along this potion board, and the higher points you'll score. So it's a really fun game. It has simultaneous play. It plays 2 to 4 players in 45 minutes. War of Whispers, on the other hand, is a really interesting area control game. It has some deduction on it because you have a board with 5 different armies controlling the board. And you aren't one of the armies. You're like the hand behind, you're like the shadowy figure in the background manipulating these kingdoms. And you have affiliations on the kingdom. And the scoring is a really easy breakdown. Basically, for every city that your top army scores, that's like 3 points. For every city the second kingdom you're rooting for is 2, 1, 0, etc. Like -1. Then there's like 1 or 2 you're not rooting for. They're worth 0 and -1 for you. So you really don't want them to win. But you can change your affiliations throughout the course of the game. So it's primarily a worker placement game where you're placing your sort of shadowy figure on each kingdom's action spaces. And then it's played over 3 rounds where you go through the entire clock for all the armies and all 5 kingdoms and do the actions for whichever player is there. And then at the end of 3 rounds, whichever kingdom is winning the area control battle, you'll score accordingly. So that's a quick overview of War of the Whispers. It's a really neat, sort of different game around area control, sort of social deduction almost too. But with that, let's go to production. Let's start with Quacks of Quedlinburg. You can see here on the cover, it's got this sort of wacky art style that I'm not a huge fan of. My least favorite thing about this game is the title of the game, because I don't think it really tells you what it is. And the cover art, the art style is not my thing. Everything else about the game is pretty great though. Basically, you've got different recipe books with chips. You have your pot board. This is like your central scoring board. And then everyone gets their own bag and puts their chips in. These bags are nice, and you draw out your chips and put them in your pot and count out your points. Not a ton of components, no cards or anything else. That's pretty much it. There's a lot of different pieces and chips that you can build your bag with. War of Whispers, a little unfair. If you can't see on the bottom, I've got like the collector's edition. So I have some upgraded components for it. But the upgraded components are pretty nice. You have these banners for each army represented in their color. I think those come in even the retail version. The upgraded version gives you plastic for all the cities on the map. It gives you, for your workers, it gives you plastic workers or these like seats or Hand of the King's thrones that you can place on people. There's a board, circle board. This is sort of the clock I was talking about, where you can go around the exterior. These are all the worker placement spots, and then the area controls in the center. Everyone gets their board. This is your scoring board. This is where you put each of your chips and what army you align yourself with face down. And then there's some cards with some great art on them. For each army, you've got like the horse kingdom, the golden lion. There's some elephants. And each of these cards, I guess it's just one piece of art per army, but they break down like what they do based on what cards and symbols you have. So from a production standpoint and just an overall art direction, for me personally, War of the Whispers is definitely the stronger of these two. Um, the art's fantastic, the upgraded components are nice in the collector's edition. Quacks doesn't do anything wrong at all in its production, but it's all cardboard. There's nothing sort of deluxe or nice about it. The bags are a nice microfiber bag. That's about the nicest thing I can say. The pot for counting your points is nice, but I actively dislike the artwork on the central board and things like that. So that's just not for me personally. So for production, I'm going to go War of Whispers for sure. And let's get into gameplay, which is, you know, a more substantial category, if you will. So, War of the Whispers, in my opinion, scratches that risk itch of, you know, armies conquering other armies and moving these bits all around a table as armies march forward. The difference is that it's all predetermined. You don't need to worry about dice rolling, so conquering is much faster. And the game plays in a really tight 60 minutes. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't play out in hours and hours. It's 3 rounds. You know, you're going through each action. Every round it's the same no matter how many players you have, and it's over around the same time. So it's a great length for that type of itch. And adding this affiliation with which army you're rooting for is really cool, because at the end of each round you can choose, you know, if you're playing a 3 or 4 player game and everyone happens to have the same armies near their top and you happen to be someone in the bottom, you have the opportunity to switch and reveal your affiliations and switch them and reveal them to all players on the table. And that drastically and dynamically changes the way the game works. When you make those switches, you're basically gambling. You're revealing a lot of information. You're basically gambling on the fact that the current board state is going to be too hard to adjust to negatively impact your scoring, which is a really neat thing. There's a ton of things I like about it. The way you place your workers on the worker placement spots to manipulate each army. Every worker placement spot gives you the chance to bluff. Am I playing my worker here on this lion army because the lion army I actually care about winning? Because they're my negative point army and you're watching my action to see if I do something nefarious or negative for them? Or am I just bluffing and just playing sort of like a middle army and I'm sort of offsetting my turn to set something else up in the future? Every turn is very interesting because you have those things to consider yourself, and when you're watching other players take their actions and place their workers, you're making the same judgment of them. Another thing that's cool is your workers stay out. You only bring back so many, so your workers, the placement, you're making a significant investment in that worker placement spot when you do it. And also there's some rules where you only place so many out per round, and empty spaces, people to the right of those any empty spaces get to take multiple actions. So if you don't have a worker on a spot, you still take the action. It's based on whoever's worker is in a certain position, which is a really, again, you've got this thing where if you're the only worker on a specific army, why are you the only one manipulating that army? Is it because everyone else is rooting against them? Or are they just letting you do really strong things and you just got a really powerful turn of actions that round in particular? So the only negative I can say about the gameplay for War of Whispers, which I find very elegant, is that the cards that you draw and their effects, I'm still not sure. Like, there's always questions around these abilities and how strong they are and how they should be done. And even after reading on Board Game Geek and arguing with friends, this has always been a stumbling block for us. And the cards are not... It's cool. I like having the cards that you can do sort of a powerful move on one of your turns, but I dislike how hard they are to interpret. It's really frustrating. Now, moving on to Quacks of Quendlinburg. This is one of my absolute favorite push your luck games that I have in my collection. It is immensely fun every time I play it. The simultaneous play means you're engaged the whole time. It's the tension of just knowing how many chips you have in there and how many bombs are in there and then pulling it out and secretly revealing it and busting is really thrilling. And it's not overly punishing when you do bust. You basically just miss out on some of the actions and buying. And of course, bag building and deck building are mechanics I really enjoy as well. So Quacks of Quedlinburg has a mechanic that I really enjoy, and sort of mixes it up by making it this push your luck mechanic and busting with each chip. So for those reasons and the reasons I mentioned, sort of the problems I have with the cards in War of Whispers, game mechanics and gameplay, I mean, Quacks of Quedlinburg, it's won all these awards on the back. It deserves the praise it's gotten, and it's a tremendous amount of fun when you do end up getting it to the table. So for me, game mechanics, Quacks of Quedlinburg, no contest here for me. Now, moving on to theme, I'm not going to dwell on this one because, as I mentioned, the artwork and theme of Quacks does not hit me potentially right. The overall theme of mixing up your pot, your brew of things, doesn't bother me, but the overall art and aesthetic of the game, I'm not a big fan of. Especially compared to War of Whispers, I think being the shadowy hand behind the kingdom is a cool concept and something different in these army games. And I think War of Whispers does it really well. It is a cooler theme. I mean, obviously, it's sort of leaning into the Game of Thrones thing. And it's got some awards up here, too. You know, it's not like other people haven't recognized this as a good game as well. But for theme for me, just the artwork and this sort of Game of Thrones-esque vibe without actually having the Game of Thrones license, it's certainly leaning into the popularity of that show. It's a really cool risk area control game. What's great about it is the depth of it in the amount of time you're giving it is really what's great. I mean, it really is no more than 60 minutes. And you can sort of have that risk epic conquer the world feel in under that time frame. So theme for me, you know, definitely War of Whispers. The artwork and theme speaks more to me, although neither of these themes is really, I didn't get either of these games for their themes per se. Their themes aren't really what drew me in. It's the gameplay in general and how they are doing different things in my board game collection as far as what they offer. So last but not least, we'll come to replayability. And, War of Whispers, it's one of those things, the more players you have, I think it plays best, at 3 and 4 player versus 2. It works at 2, but it's not nearly as interesting. At 2 player, you really have a good read of, you're really focusing on one other player and you've got a good read of what they're probably trying to do. At 3 and 4, it gets a little more interesting just because you can't, it's hard to discern the social deduction and all the other machinations of it become more interesting to me. And this does have a couple expansions that I got with the collector's edition, new cards that you can shuffle in to the card decks to mix up the draw. Although that is, I like the card abilities, there are several abilities that I don't like over clarity. But I must say, while I think there's plenty of game in that box, when it comes to replayability, Quacks of Quedlinburg just is the game that keeps on giving. I cannot think of a time that every time you play this game, I've never struggled with the rules. The rules are very clear. The game is always fun. Every one of these chips that you have that's represented by these recipe cards has multiple sets that you can set out, so you can actually change what the chips are doing. So imagine a deck builder where you have cards, like a card set, and you can change what those cards do every game. That's what this game does, which is really gives it a ton of replayability. I mean, the replayability is extraordinary. I haven't really kept track of which bookmarks I've used in this game. I'm sure I've probably gotten to all of them at this point, but it's one of those things like, I don't even know if I've gotten to all the permutations and abilities of the recipes. But I know every time I play the game, I have an immense amount of fun. So for me, when it comes down to my collection, if I had to sell War of the Whispers, I'd be okay with it. I played it several times. I enjoy it. I've gotten what I sort of can get out of it. With the right 4 people, this game really sings. But Quacks of Quedlinburg, I mean, I just got back into this game with my kids. Other than them cheating a little bit when we were doing too much simultaneous thing with them with them looking before and putting chips back. Other than that, with my youngest, you know, they had a blast, and even my 6-year-old could play this and enjoy this. So this is a really great game, and I enjoy it. I get as much out of it no matter who I'm playing against. It's a ton of fun. The push your luck mechanic is just really thrilling, especially in those final rounds when you're doing things together and you have those big moments of someone busting or not. It's a really fun game. Replayability's through the roof with the recipes, so I gotta give it to Quacks. And I think that means that we have a tie. We have Quacks winning gameplay and replayability, sort of. So when you look at this, the strength of this game is strictly the gameplay. The theme and artwork isn't my favorite, whereas War of Whispers is stronger in those two things. Obviously, I like the game too. All these games are in my collection. But it won on theme and artwork and production level. So they're tied, but when it comes to a tie like this, it sort of goes to overtime, which is, you know, set up and tear down time, just my overall impressions of the game, how much it gets to the table. And for me, again, with this needing sort of 3 and 4 players to really shine, this game being excellent at any player count, and just the game being so enjoyable, it's our higher seed as well, and for good reason, in my opinion. Quacks of Quendlinburg, when it comes down to just the raw game of this, the fun of this game is immense. So for me, it has to be the winner. It's going to break any ties in this particular matchup, and Quacks of Quedlinburg is going to move on in our tournament of board game champions here on Board Game Madness. And with that, we are finished this particular matchup. As always, please like and subscribe to the videos so you don't miss any of our future matchups. Let us know your thoughts of what we got wrong or right in each category in the comments below, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.